What's the big deal about cannabis law? And why can't I just use the templates online and call a lawyer later? My name is Paula Collins. I am an attorney and accountant based in New York City. I work with clients throughout the country, and I am solely devoted to the cannabis, CBD, and hemp space. I'm a member of the International Cannabis Bar Association and also a member of DOPE CFO. Both of those are premier organizations in law and in accounting in the cannabis, CBD, and hemp industries. I'm also on the board for Elevate Northeast, which is an advocacy and education group based out of Boston, Massachusetts. You have my contact information here. I do hope that I'll hear from you. So the first inkling that somebody realizes, well, maybe I need some legal help or I need to start doing some research online, is when you go to form your business. And that's true whether you're in the cannabis industry or in some other industry. You need to form an entity. By that, I mean, will you be a single member LLC? Will you be a sole proprietor without the benefit of forming an LLC? Would you like to form a partnership with someone else or perhaps a corporation? Now, there are a number of different reasons that I could advocate for one structure or another, but they really vary greatly according to your situation and according to the industry. Oftentimes I'll get a call from somebody or I'll get contacted online and they'll say, well, for cannabis, what's the best entity? Well, that's really super hard for anybody to answer because it really depends on the number of investors you want to bring on board, your appetite for wanting the business to be all yours or whether you want to share equity ownership positions with other people, and your exit plan, your exit strategy, if and when the business should be passed along to some other form. So there is no easy answer, which is why I think that it's wise to consult with a live lawyer rather than relying on templates that are by their very nature fixed and designed to have your business fit into what could be a square. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole, as they say. I mentioned planning your exit strategy now. Now, it's possible that you are listening to this video and you're thinking, what do you mean plan my exit strategy? I'm not even in business yet. And furthermore, Paula, let me tell you, this has been my lifelong dream. I totally respect that. I meet people every day that say to me, oh my goodness, I have wanted a cannabis business since I was a kid and first discovered marijuana. And so this is my dream come true. I am never going to give up this business. Well, you might say that now, but life happens, business happens, governments happen, the laws could change, and your life circumstances could change, meaning that what may fit for you right now may not fit for you in 3 years or 5 years. Plan your exit strategy right now. Plan to structure your business so that you've also got a way to get out of your business if and when that time comes. By getting out of the business, I mean that you might bring on additional partners or investors. You might go public. You know, a lot of people contact me and they say, yep, we're going to keep it as a small business right now. And then in 3 years, we're going to sell shares and we're going to go public and we're going to make millions, if not billions of dollars. Not very realistic for a lot of reasons, but if that is your goal to go public, then we need to plan that right now from the very start. If the business should get into trouble, we need to talk about selling inventory or managing that debt, whatever debt you might have, restructuring it. Or we might talk about selling the entire business to other people in the cannabis industry. I will say up front, I also practice bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is not an option for a business that deals in THC. Absolutely not an option. And even though CBD is federally legal, the bankruptcy courts are still not cozying up to it, frankly, because they cannot deal with the inventory. CBD is still governed and legislated and regulated by the FDA. And there are so many controversies and so many different issues surrounding the element of THC and the presence of THC, the need to test for THC within hemp and within CBD, so that the bankruptcy court is not even really amenable to having a bankruptcy CBD business or a CBD business in bankruptcy. So, like I say, plan your exit strategy or plan a strategy for exit from the very start. When I work with clients, as I do in accounting, I do in law, I start off with the perpetual data room. This is just a place online that everybody has access to. You own the materials, you own the room, you own everything about it, but it's a place where all the people that are involved in the business at the executive level or the consulting level can both post documents, keep them there for easy access, as well as receive documents. And it's just a way, so especially, when COVID hit and we needed an emergency plan, it was great to have access to some of those documents right away. It's also great for investors, because if you need to pull together a bunch of documents, within 24 hours to present to somebody who's trying to give you money for your business, it's great if you can have that from one place rather than looking in different hard drives on different laptops, perhaps going to a paper file cabinet, perhaps having to scrounge through a whole stack of papers that have accumulated on your desk. I mentioned the work stoppage due to COVID. It could also be due to a wildfire or a fire or a flood, as we have seen, even the extreme cold temperatures that just locked down business and made it so that people couldn't move about. Could you prove your payroll and other expenses if you had to? Could you prove what's in your inventory if you had to? Do you have all of your documents in a safe space that's not going to be susceptible to fire, wind damage from flood, smoke damage, that sort of thing? So a perpetual data room is one way to get around that. Again, this is something that you can't really get from an online template that you might use from any of the major online template providers. I'd like you to start thinking right away about key person coverage, meaning that you want to have life insurance for key people in your business. You also want to start thinking about trust planning and asset protection for those individuals. Why do I say that? Well, suppose you've got your CEO who suddenly gets into a car accident, and that person's assets are then called into question because there's a big lawsuit. Well, we want to make sure that that doesn't impact on your business that you've built with that CEO. You also, and vice versa, you want to make sure that the business itself doesn't impact on their personal expenses that they might incur. Asset protection can be done through a revocable trust or through an irrevocable trust. But while you're forming your business, this is a great time to look at what are the options there. Also, for that matter, look at retirement planning. Again, that's another piece of your exit strategy, but you're going to spend a great deal of time and a great deal of money in this cannabis business. And while you're doing that, you cannot neglect your own personal retirement needs or the retirement needs of others who are key players in the business. A lawyer is good to have around, to have a relationship with, because you will have an unbelievable volume of contracts way before you even open doors. Especially in a partnership or an LLC, you want to make sure that those contracts have assigned the liability appropriately, that it isn't just one person individually assuming liability for whatever it is that is the subject of the contract. Real estate is a big deal with regard to municipalities and with regard to state law. So you'll need a lawyer on your team to review any real estate contracts. Keep in mind, especially if you're in a new market, you might need to scout out 3 or 4 or even more possible locations for your business. And you might even be renting for a couple of months in different locations while you wait for the municipalities to roll out the specifics of what is permitted, what kind of zoning, what kind of footage is expected for various operations, either footage from other structures in the neighborhood or within your building, what types of allocation of square footage are required. You will spend 12 to 18 months in the pre-operational status while awaiting licensing. That's money that's going out the door before you even have the ability to earn anything back. So a lot of moving parts. I mentioned the real estate piece. There's also getting all the systems, the accounting systems, the compliance systems, the security systems, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, getting all of that lined up. Also standard operating procedures. You'll need a lawyer to, first of all, vet all of the key people who are going to be a part of your business, especially those who are going to be on the license with you. When I say vet, you know, a lot of people will say, oh no, I'm going to bring my cousin in on the business. We've been friends since we were, you know, we're cousins. We've been friends for a lifetime. And I can't imagine doing this business without him. Well, maybe your cousin got picked up for a marijuana charge that has not yet been expunged. Can be done, but it hasn't gone through that process. Maybe there's another charge that was related to that might be a little more difficult to get expunged. Credit is a big deal in this business. Even if your favorite cousin is all about cannabis and all very willing to help, if he's got poor credit, or if he's got some blemishes or some outstanding debts that have not been resolved, it's going to be a problem to get that license approved. You'll need to work with a lawyer. And as a bankruptcy lawyer, you'll find that a bankruptcy lawyer will be able to pull things like credit reports. Also, you'll need that lawyer to look at the tax return. So find a lawyer who knows something about tax and can read a return and determine what it is that it's saying. Maybe even pull the IRS transcript to make sure that there are no outstanding tax debts. Part of the licensing process involves writing a business plan. Again, you'll find templates online, but you really do need a live lawyer to make your story make sense within the context of a cannabis application. You'll also need to write that standard operating procedure that they want to see in the license application and deal with the HR issues, especially with regard to security and with regard to diversity. Those two areas in HR are a big deal in a cannabis application. These things are difficult to subcontract because whatever is on your licensing application has to be echoed in the business plan or in that standard operating procedure or in the HR manual. So if you have parsed that out to different people that you have found online or contracted with, then it's difficult to make it all harmonious. It's better to have one law office or one lawyer in charge of all of this. Compliance is going to be now and forever. For the life of your cannabis business, compliance is going to be something you're going to have to deal with. Plan on devoting 40% of your budget to testing. 40% of it at least. That's if you're even on the retail side, maybe 40% is high, but you need to at least be able to have some means of pulling testing reports on the product that you're selling. You will be relying on the honesty of your distributors and on the people that you're buying from. But definitely if you're in a grow operation or in a processing operation, 40% of your budget will go to testing at least. Also, you need to be aware of branding, packaging, logos, and marketing. They must be in compliance with cannabis law. Packaging is very different in cannabis. For that matter, you need to realize that your logo cannot be trademarked at the federal level. That means in each state, you're going to want to register with the trademark office in that state. There is a lot of infringement of logos in this space. I think what will happen is somebody will see a cool logo and think, wow, that's so neat. I'm going to put it on a t-shirt. And next thing you know, they're selling the t-shirt on some other platform. And you're going to have to be in the position of chasing after it, sending a cease and desist letter, pursuing them legally if necessary, so that they won't infringe on your logo. Social media in this space is an ever-moving target. Different platforms have different rules. Some of the most famous platforms will not permit a cannabis post. So you might find cannabis ads or cannabis posts that appear for a while and then they vanish. And it's because somebody within that social media platform monitored it and pulled the ad or pulled the blog post. Even WordPress has recently cracked down on websites that mention cannabis. So it's something that can go on for months and months. And you might say to me, what do you mean I can't post anything about cannabis? Have you seen this on such and such a platform? And it's true, it can happen for months and months, and then suddenly it's gone. It is shut down or it is frozen. Security systems, kind of like compliance, now and forever. Most states require duplicate systems. You will also want to be able to review the personnel assigned to your business separately from what the security system is doing. So make sure that you are able to do your own diligence about those personnel members. And of course, on an ongoing basis, review those contracts. You'll spend quite a bit of your budget on security. The requirements are state and municipality specific, but most areas require duplicate systems. In other words, where you have a contract with, and I'm talking about a retail, a dispensary, a delivery can have security requirements, and of course a grow or processing operation. The reason for that is the municipalities don't want you to have an agreement with one security system, but then the individuals who are working your case are actually on the take. They want to have you to have another security system so that each one of them can follow up and watch the other. What's at stake? Suppose you say, you know, all of this sounds great. I'm going to do this 3 years down the line, but first I just need to get my business up and going. Well, trafficking is still a crime. Even if your business is legal at the state level, at the federal level, the movement of marijuana from one person to another for profit is considered a crime. Even the movement across state lines or within the state is a crime. Thousands of dollars can result in fines and in legal fees. And let's say you have a legal operation, but you get hit with some type of summons that results in a work stoppage or a suspension of your license. And during that time that your license is suspended, you're still paying rent. Presumably you're still keeping those contracts going that you had agreed to, and you're also under obligation to pay taxes. This calls for a constant review of accounting practices, and your lawyer and your accountant should be in regular contact with one another. The reason for that is there is so much overlap between what's expected in accounting in a cannabis business and what the law requires. And so there's a constant back and forth. Well, we're doing this in accounting because the law requires this, or the law requires a certain something to happen with taxes. And so we have to rely on the accountant. And so there's constant back and forth of conversations. These are not like a one-time conversation and then nobody talks to another till the Christmas party. This has to be an ongoing, if not a weekly meeting, if not even more frequently in the beginning stages. Also, a continuous review of your accounting processes will alert you to problems before they become life or death existential threats to your business. There's just a symbiotic relationship between accounting and law, and that's part of why, part of what fascinates me about the business, because of the back and forth there. GAAP accounting is required if you are fundraising. What do I mean by that? Even if you're doing small scale, like Regulation D fundraising for $1 million, you must have GAAP accounting. A lot of lawyers will tell you, and a lot of accountants in this business will say, well, the minimum for you to get into this business is $3 million. That's the only way you're really going to make it. So you start the process of a GoFundMe, or you beef that up to another form of fundraising. You For you to back that up, you really must have GAAP accounting. That is based on cost accounting, and it's a certain it is what's required by not only the AICPA but by all of the other banking laws and federal laws. It's required for publicly traded companies. So if your goal is in 3 years to go public, we'll get your accounting in place right now. It's also strongly recommended when you go to sell your business to have had GAAP accounting so you can immediately produce the reports and the audits and all of the work papers that will support your positions on profit and loss. Tax compliance. Now, this is another one. A lot of times I'm talking to people who have had several businesses in the past and they think, well, you know, I've done this, I've done that, done some real estate, done some retail, done some other things, some online businesses. I let the tax person take care of that at the end of the year. No, in cannabis, it cannot be delayed. For one thing, you're going to be making large payments to the local governments on an ongoing basis, usually on a monthly, if not more frequent basis. Soon we will have a federal excise tax. I cannot tell you how soon. I can tell you that it is in the draft proposal of the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act that was recently proposed by Chuck Schumer, Cory Booker, and Senator Wyden. And so I think that right away you need to have it on your radar that eventually we're looking at a federal excise tax of as much as 25% that will go to the federal government. The IRS 2 years ago, before COVID, the IRS promised a big step up in audit and review of cannabis businesses. That came about as the result of a study that the IRS did that showed that a lot, I want to say close to 80% of the state tax returns that they reviewed on cannabis businesses did not report the same profits as the federal tax returns. And so the federal government realizing that a lot of money is just going unreported on their federal returns, and they want to be able to claim that money. I mentioned the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. It will introduce the federal excise tax. Your accounting needs will get far more complex rather than less complex. You might think, well, if it's all legal at the federal level, that takes out 280E, which frees up a lot of the stress in cannabis accounting. But if you think about the complex accounting that is involved in the tobacco industry or the alcohol production and distribution industry, there's a lot that will be coming down the pike for cannabis businesses. Failure to comply is costly and criminal. Famous cannabis tax cases will drag on for years. And during those years, that cannabis business is continuing to operate on a regular basis while still paying accountants and lawyers to figure out what it was that was going on 4 or 5 years ago. And they're having to pay the taxes. They're having to pay the taxes on their current year obligations as well as on that prior year obligation, with the hope that they will win the case and then get that money refunded to them. If there is an intentional diversion of funds or misrepresentation on your tax return, that can result in a criminal prosecution. So I mentioned earlier that trafficking is still a crime. Well, tax fraud is still a crime. And one can easily see how if you were diverting funds in order to avoid taxation or to hide how much profit you had made, that can easily cross the line into not only a tax audit, but then a charge of tax fraud. And remember, for tax fraud, that is a criminal charge for which there is jail time. So why are cannabis accountants so expensive? I talk about this on another video. Cannabis accountants have very specialized training. They can't have too many clients at once because of the sheer manpower that's involved in working those accounts. Tremendous compliance requirements. Cannabis accountants really have to stay on top of the law because the law changes from state to state on a moment's notice. And also the errors and omissions insurance goes up with cannabis. It also goes up with those of us practicing cannabis law. We pay an increased rider on our errors and omissions insurance. That's our malpractice. I'll go back to this. In another presentation, I talk about Aunt Mary Lou. Aunt Mary Lou is your favorite aunt or sister-in-law or a good old family friend who's helped you with all of your other businesses. Can you keep her around? Well, you can, as long as Aunt Mary Lou is willing to be trained in the practices required for cannabis businesses. This is not business as usual. This is not like your other home businesses or your small businesses that you've run in other industries. Aunt Mary Lou will be called upon to comply with higher levels and deeper levels of scrutiny in the accounting and legal sphere. However, we do need people like Aunt Mary Lou. And I say Aunt Mary Lou, meaning those people in your home business or in your other small businesses that have been with you for years, that have helped you out. We'll need them to help collate tax data and other information. Don't get rid of them, but you'll also need to step up your game with cannabis trained lawyers and cannabis trained accountants. There will be an ongoing need for advocacy on behalf of your industry and other similarly positioned industries as the laws evolve. We saw this in particular in Massachusetts with the hemp industry, how the FDA approved it 1 month, and then within 2 months, Massachusetts was taking action so that it almost put the hemp industry out of business, to be quite frank. And so we needed advocates to go in and talk to legislators to make sure that the laws were still working on behalf of the small farmers. There will be new products and new players. What comes to mind right now? Delta 8 and Delta 9. Those are being added into the CBD mix and CBG markets. And what does it mean for compliance? What does it mean for testing? It's all very new. Nobody's quite sure. There will also be new players that come and go as there are more mergers and acquisitions and more people come into this industry and more people exit. Subscription-based legal services agreements will likely save you in the long run. When I say save you, yes, it's a commitment. It's a budget item that you must plan on if you're in a subscription-based legal services agreement. And yet you get so much more than if you were to just satisfy yourself with grabbing a template here or there online and then calling an attorney and saying, help, I'm in trouble. I need you to clean this up. You'll find that a subscription will be in the long run cheaper than hiring an attorney or an accountant or both to do a cleanup operation. Also, you'll know that your attorney is available and you don't have to second guess, well, gee, should I call? No, if I call, they're going to charge me $600. If you've got somebody on retainer, or if you've got somebody, if you're in a subscription-based legal services agreement, you don't have to second guess. You know that you've got that phone call ability to make. You'll also have regular meetings to discuss what's going on. Sometimes you may not even be aware of what's going on, but your lawyer has been on top of the rules. And as they hear you speak, they might say, oh, wait a second, we need to talk about that. I am admitted to practice law in the states of New York, New Jersey, and Missouri. There is some crossover that I can do to other states for contract purposes. It's a very specific way that lawyers can work in transactional issues across state lines if it were similar to what I would be doing in my own practice in my own state. I am able to serve accounting needs and tax needs throughout the country because I am an enrolled agent. And you have my contact information here, my 2 logos. And again, I am Paula Collins. I'm an enrolled agent. I'm on the board with Elevate Northeast. I'm a member of I'm admitted to practice in the U.S. Tax Court, which means I could take your case from inception all the way through final verdict in the U.S. Tax Court. I'm a member of the International Cannabis Bar Association and DOPE CFO. I sincerely hope that I will hear from you and that I can help discuss your needs in the cannabis industry. Thank you very much.